In this video, we're going to look at how to write equations of perpendicular bisectors. Okay, let's talk about what a perpendicular bisector is. To write the equation of a perpendicular bisector, you have to have an initial line. So let's say we have this line, we might have these 2 points, we might call it line AB. But if I want to write a perpendicular bisector, 2 things has to happen. It has to bisect it, which means go through the midpoint. So this side would be equal to this side, and it has to be perpendicular to that line, which means it has to create a 90-degree angle. So our goal is to be able to write the equation of this line, given that we already have information of this first line. Okay, so let's make a couple notes. Perpendicular, remember, in order to have a perpendicular line, it means we have to have opposite, reciprocal slopes. Okay, so once we find the slope of our first line, we have to find the opposite reciprocal slope. Opposite means to change the sign. So one slope will be positive and one will be negative. And reciprocal means to flip the fraction. Okay, so that we have to do. We have to be able to find the slope of our first line. Now, bisector means that it bisects or goes through the midpoint. So we have to find the midpoint of our given line, and then we will use our new slope and our midpoint in order to write the equation of the line. Now, the formula for midpoint is x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and y1 plus y2 divided by 2. And that makes a coordinate pair. That gives us a point on our perpendicular bisector. One other thing you do need to know is the formula for slope, and we use m to represent slope. And the formula to find slope of the given line would be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So you need to know this formula and the formula for midpoint very well. Okay, let's look at an example. This asks us to write the equation of the perpendicular bisector of the line joining these 2 points. So we already have these 2 points. Remember, that's going to be our given line. And so if you wanted to, you could sketch a picture to kind of see what's happening here. So -1, -7 is going to be somewhere about here, if this is our x and this is our y-axis. And then -2, 6 is going to be somewhere maybe right up there. And so we have the line that goes through those 2 points, and that would be our initial line. So we need to find the slope of that. Okay, we'll call it line 1. So the slope, remember, is y2 minus y1. So if we call this point 1 and this point 2, I would have -7 minus 6 divided by -1 minus -2. When I simplify this, -7 minus 6 is going to be -13. And double negatives make a plus, so -1 plus 2 is 1. So we can just say that the slope of this line that we already have is -13. Okay, so now we need to find the midpoint of this line, because remember, and I'm guessing here, I haven't found the midpoint yet, but the midpoint's going to be somewhere in this area, and these 2 sides are going to be equal, and I have to draw a perpendicular line through that point that creates a 90-degree angle. Okay, so when my sketch isn't great, we do need to go ahead and find the midpoint. So the midpoint of that line, remember, is going to be x plus x over 2, or x1 plus x2, and y1 plus y2 over 2. And we want to simplify that. So -2 plus -1 is -3 over 2. That's our x-coordinate. And 6 plus -7 is -1 over 2, which is -1/2 is going to be our y-coordinate. So this is the midpoint. So we're going to use this point, and we're going to use our perpendicular slope. So if this is our slope for line 1, and our perpendicular bisector, which we can call line 2, is going to be perpendicular to this, it's going to have an opposite slope. So this slope is going to be positive. And this is really -13 over 1. So to flip that, we write 1 over 13. So I'm going to use that slope and this point. And I'm just going to write the equation in point slope form, which remember is y minus our y value of the point that we're using, equals our slope times x minus the x value of the point that we're using. Now, if you aren't familiar with point slope form, there is a video on how to write all the different forms of a line: point slope form, slope intercept form, and standard form, so you may want to check that out. We are going to clean this up just a little bit because this double negative makes a positive. So I get y plus 1/2 equals 1/13 times x plus 3/2. And this would be the equation of the perpendicular bisector. Okay, let's look at one more example. Again, line AB passes through these 2 points. Guys, in math, it's always helpful if you need to just sketch a little quick. Doesn't have to be perfect, but a quick graph to see what you're doing. So 9, -2, I'm gonna say is approximately there. I'm not being super exact. You can, get grid paper and do better, but I just kind of want to see it. And 3, 4 might be somewhere right about there. So let's say this is the line we have. This is our line AB, so this might be A and this might be B. So we know that we need to find the slope of that line. Again, slope is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. When we do this, we're going to get 6 over -6, which is -1. So this line has a slope of -1. Remember, we need the perpendicular line. So for our second line, we need to have a slope that is perpendicular to this, which means we have to change the sign. So our new slope is going to be positive. And really, this is 1/1. So when we flip 1/1, we still get 1, okay? But this one's positive and this one's negative. This is the slope I'm going to use. I now need to find the midpoint of the line that we're given. So midpoint is x plus x over 2 and y plus y over 2. Let's simplify this and we're going to get 6, 1. This is the point we're going to use. That's the midpoint, okay? 6, 1 is where the midpoint's going to be, and then we're finding the equation of this perpendicular bisector that goes through that midpoint and is perpendicular to this line. In point slope form, that would be y minus my y value of 1 equals my slope times x minus my x value of 6. Now, you can always change this form to slope-intercept or standard form, but if we're not asked for a specific form in this class, we're always going to leave it like this. Okay, so that is how to write the equation of a perpendicular bisector. And if you need to, check out the videos on parallel and perpendicular lines and how to write the lines in different forms. Okay, see you in the next video.